We have the same best bet, which I'm actually excited about this. We're both going to go with Dorino, Gilbert Burns as a dog. You can get him. The best price I'm seeing on him is plus 155 at Circa. That's what I bet him at. And but he's a dog everywhere. The worst number you can get on him is like plus 132, 135. It looks like so. Lots of value out there on Gilbert Burns. I'll let you take the honors here. What do you like about Gilbert here?
I thought you were going to be totally against this pick, and I rethought this. I went to go pick up my daughter, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to give out Burns because I know AJ well enough that for some reason he's probably going to be on the opposite side of this pick. And then when you told me right before the podcast, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Like, he's got Burns too. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll go ahead. I'll give it out because I do. I like this one quite a bit, and the odds to me, they don't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I could see maybe a pick'em line. You could have JDM maybe like a minus 110, minus 115, respectable, but minus 175 just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like I was just talking about with St. Denis, JDM hasn't seen the top of the food chain yet, but he's working his way up. Give the guy credit. He did go 3 rounds with Kevin Holland, and I wouldn't necessarily say Holland's top of the food chain. He's more of a gatekeeper type, but I did think Jack won that one, but it wasn't nothing that really impressed me or convinced me a whole lot. And then I look at Gilbert and I'm thinking, he was absolutely hurt against Bilal Muhammad. And I think that took a lot of steam out of him. Not only do I think his legs were beat up, but obviously his shoulder was just trashed. Couldn't throw a punch. Couldn't do anything. And he was in a lot of wars. But I think that experience with those top level fighters will really help him here. I think he can use his ground game here. I know he's kind of limited with some of his strikes, but he has a ton of power. And I think Maddalena will be able to go ahead and kind of keep him away a little bit. But eventually, I think the experience is going to play out here with Gilbert. And I think that there's a potential where we don't see Gilbert in these type of fights anymore. If he loses this one, he's going to end up down there, fighting. I mean, there's a lot of names that aren't really names. I guess I could say it that way. I think that's a trajectory where Burns goes if he loses this fight. And for Maddalena, who knows? He could find himself in a title fight here really, really quick. So the motivation for me is it's kind of split down the middle, but it's more experience with me. I think Burns is going to make one final push. I think he's going to be healthy. And I think he fights the fight that gets him a win here, and he's going to follow that path along and not stray too far away. And also, this is in Miami, right? Like, I think Burns is going to have so much fan backing in this one versus Maddalena. Like, Maddalena's going to come in here like he's the villain here. I don't think he's going to get much support at all. So I think it'll be an enjoyable week for Burns, and in a week that would normally be tough for a lot of fighters. I could see a lot of support here. So, yeah, it's Gilbert Burns for me. I'll take the plus money. I think the odds are one of the reasons why I'm going ahead and taking Gilbert, but I also think that there is a path for him to go ahead and beat Jack Maddalena. So that's where I'm at.
I think when we look at Gilbert Burns and when he made that move up to welterweight and he became the title contender there, he fought Kamaru Usman and really hurt him early in that fight. If you remember it, I mean, it's been a while, but he was really close to becoming the champion of that division. And I don't know how much is really holding him back other than, maybe the fact that he's getting a little bit older. But Jack Della Maddalena, this is not the kind of guy that Gilbert Burns is going to be intimidated to be in there with. Remember, he took a short notice fight against Khamzat Chimaev, who is like the most terrifying man in the world, and gave him really the only fight that anyone's ever given him. Like, it was the first time that Chimaev didn't look like just a juggernaut. Like, he looked like maybe he was beatable. Some people thought he did beat him. I think that his stock went up in that fight, and then the Stephen Thompson fight was in between there, a handy win for him. He smashed Neil Magny. He didn't look as great as I thought he would against Masvidal, but then the Muhammad fight, I think we have to kind of take with a grain of salt, like you said. I think he gets hurt early in that fight. It was never really he didn't really have a chance to compete there.
Didn't he take that fight on short notice too with Bilal? I mean, he was coming off. I know he was coming off of some nasty weight cuts with the fight you just mentioned, but wasn't Bilal kind of short notice?
Maybe
too?
He did. Maybe it was. I I think, yeah, I know it was a quick turnaround. Like, it wasn't long after the Masvidal fight. I
Mhm.
don't know if it was planned or not, to be honest, off the top of my head. But I do think that Burns is going to want to make this a grappling match, and if he does, I think he controls it. So I could see Burns even getting a finish here. My thought was when this card was announced, I said that's probably a pick 'em. I bet maybe Maddalena is like a minus 120, something like that, because he's the hot prospect and people want to bet on him. Plus 155 is an absurd number. It's a disrespectful number, and it's making it seem like that Jack Della is Hamzat Shemaev, and he's not that. So give me Gilbert Burns here again. This is more about value than anything else to me. Like, I wouldn't take this bet if I didn't think he wins at least as often as he loses. But at plus 155, that's all I really need. If this is a pick 'em fight and I'm getting plus 155, I feel really good about my position on it. So Gilbert Burns, double best bet for the pod. And you're right. If Gilbert Burns loses this at age 37, like, we can probably forget about just Gilbert Burns being like a title contending or even a top prospect getting type of fighter. He may not be long for UFC pay-per-view main cards if he were to fall here. So I think he is good enough to take the hype train and turn it around on Jack Della Maddalena. So, especially given what Maddalena's last fight looked like against Basil Hafez, that's like a short notice guy. You're like, it was supposed to be I don't know. It was a couple of things, like he just never really got anything going. He didn't really have an answer to the wrestling.
He hasn't looked in the last two fights like he looked prior to that fight.
Yeah, and the truth is, Burns is a lot better than Kevin Holland. Like, Kevin Holland's he's a dangerous fighter, but it's not like he's some technically sound fighter. Like, Jack Della Maddalena is probably going to beat up guys like Kevin Holland for his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
Gilbert Burns is like a professional. This dude he's good everywhere. He's great on the mat. Like I said, I think this is a disrespectful number. So I'm going to be backing Burns in this one.